Thank you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know as we're talking college football on this channel year round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. Friday night, we just previewed Notre Dame, Penn State. Now it is time to get to the other one. You talk about the one thing I'll say about the college football playoff, this isn't a betting thing, but man, oh man, when the powers that be envision this bad boy, could you have picked four bigger brands, national fan bases, huge fan bases? Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas. Ohio State, Texas is taking place in Dallas. Ohio State, a 5.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 53.5 in this game. Let's go ahead and dive in. Let's go ahead and break this one down. And let's go ahead and talk about what should be a very fun atmosphere in Dallas. Obviously, we assume it's going to be a very pro Texas crowd with the game taking place in Texas, but we know Ohio State has fans everywhere. And I mentioned it in the Notre Dame Penn State preview. Man, oh man, oh man. I worried about what would the crowds be like for the semifinals. It's kind of after the holiday. Get-in price is well over $200 at Jerry World on Friday night. So let's go ahead and dive in. Two teams. I think one I've been pretty spot on about over the last couple weeks. And the other one, I could not be more wrong about. So let's go ahead and talk about the one that I have certainly been wrong about. That is the Ohio State Buckeyes. Okay, you don't need me to tell you that Torres has whiffed on his analysis of Ohio State. Coming out of the Michigan game, I worried about the psyche of that program. I worried about, just basically how the fan base would react with the Tennessee home game. How does Ryan Day react? There's a lot of negativity around the program. Could Tennessee pull the upset? I know Ohio State destroyed them. Then you have the Rose Bowl. And if you listened to the show last week, I said, why isn't anybody talking about Oregon? They're the team that actually beat Ohio State earlier in the year. Oregon's going to take care of business in the Rose Bowl. Yeah, got to take another L. I was dead wrong on that. By the way, I am wearing my old school Rose Bowl shirt. Has nothing to do with last week's game. This is actually from the Utah Penn State Rose Bowl 2 years ago. So I don't want people thinking, oh, Torres is an Ohio State homer. Don't think you would be if you've ever listened to this show, because I think I've been as critical of Ryan Day as anybody. With that said, Ohio State off back-to-back impressive wins. And I think America has realized this is the team we all thought we were going to see in August when they were the betting favorite in all of the sports books and when all of the gamblers said this is the best team on paper in college football. Biggest difference, again, you don't need me to tell you, I think 20 or so million people watch the Rose Bowl. The biggest difference between Ohio State now versus Ohio State 2-3 weeks ago when they lost to Michigan, it goes without saying. It is the emergence or the re-emergence of the passing game. And really, what just stands out that's so obvious is that I truly believe this in my heart of hearts, that Ryan Day, that Chip Kelly, after that Michigan game, for 2-3 weeks, they heard from sports talk radio, fans in town, whatever. Why didn't you feed the ball to your playmakers? Why did you try to run the ball? Why didn't you just get the ball to Jeremiah Smith? Because even Michigan with a top 20 defense had no answer for him. I think they heard that. It has resonated over the last 2 weeks. And Jeremiah Smith has obviously emerged as a college football star. Rose Bowl offensive MVP, 7 catches, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns. This after having 6 catches, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns against Tennessee. And I think what's kind of interesting about this emergence or reemergence of Jeremiah Smith, in my opinion, this is kind of weird. It's kind of counter to what we think of in football. You know how we always talk about, the run game opens up the pass. The run game opens up the pass. You hear it with whoever, fill in the blank team. I think it's kind of the opposite for Ohio State. I think the pass game has opened up the run. You hit Jeremiah Smith a couple times early, all of a sudden, listen, I'm not a scheme expert. I don't claim to be. But all of a sudden, those DBs have to shift back. You're worried about getting burned deep. And what ends up happening, you're able to run the ball much more effectively. Now, listen, Oregon doesn't have statistically the best defense that Ohio State has faced, certainly not better than Texas this coming week. But I thought it was really interesting that the run game looked as good as it has all year against Oregon in that Rose Bowl. Again, you go back to Michigan, Ohio State fans. I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm not trying to be mean, but what I am trying to say is that you go back to Michigan, it felt like they were forcing the run, and then all of a sudden you're in third and long, obvious passing situations. In the last two games, you have thrown it early, and now all of a sudden the defense is on their heels. That's when, boom, Travion Henderson rips off a run. Boom, Quinshaw Judkins rips off a run. And boom, all of a sudden you're putting up points faster than you can. Defensively, Ohio State, the defense has never been an issue. Held Oregon in that game to under 300 yards of total offense, negative 23 yards rushing. Now, that's a little bit deceptive because, of course, Oregon was down early. They couldn't even try to run the ball. But that defense was always elite. The offense has caught up over the last couple weeks. And I got to take the L. I was wrong about Ohio State all along. Now let's talk Texas, because I don't think I've been wrong on Texas here for a while. And I think Texas is kind of a weird, interesting team, okay? If you only looked at the box score against Arizona State, by the way, if you did, I'm sorry for you, because the Arizona State-Texas game was one of the most insane games I've ever seen. But if you only looked at the box score, you see that the final score is 39-33. Texas gets the win in a pair of overtimes, and you sit there and say, oh, it was a shootout. No, it really wasn't. And I think this is becoming a little bit of an emerging trend. By the way, I think I said Texas, Arizona State was 39-33. It was 39-31 was the final score. So I apologize about that. But I bring it up because I think if you just saw the final score, you say, oh, that was a shootout. It really wasn't. And I think a little bit of an emerging trend for me with Texas, it is clear, and I'm not the only person to say this, but it is clear that Steve Sarkisian does not trust Quinn Ewers. And basically, if you look at Texas's results over the last 5-6 weeks, their entire game plan seems to be pretty straightforward of basically, this is the game plan. This is the goal. We're going to get a very small lead. We're going to try and run the crap out of the ball. We are going to rely on our insane defense, and we're going to try to win games ugly and low scoring. It's what they did against Arkansas. Go back to the regular season. Arkansas, 20-10 win. Not a lot of offense. The Kentucky game was a 31-14 final score, but if you watch the game, Texas had well over 40 total carries in that game. They didn't even try to let Quinn Ewers loose, okay? You beat Texas A&M 17-7. Same thing. Big lead, rely on the defense, don't give up any big plays. The SEC championship game was 6-3 at half. You're hoping that Georgia makes a mistake, whatever. The only exception to this rule has been Clemson, the worst defense that they faced during this stretch. Remember, by the way, Clemson just fired its defensive coordinator, so I think that's worth noting. And then the Arizona State game. You get up 14-3 early, you sit on the football, you try to rely on that defense, and you try to get away with finding a way to win super low-scoring games. And so you look at it, it has worked out well. I give actually a lot of credit to Steve Sarkisian because Sark is obviously an offensive guy. And I think a lot of these offensive coaches, they get so caught up in their scheme, their this, their that, their game plan, their playbook, their whatever, that they, sometimes it's to the detriment of their team. That's not the case with Sark, and I go ahead and actually give him a lot of credit. He knows that defense, which is insane, by the way. You can say whatever you want about Texas. The dudes they have on that defense are absurd, okay? You look at that defense, think about it. That Colin Simmons kid, listen, I'm not an NFL draft expert, but I think he could be a top 10 pick this year. He's a true freshman. Anthony Hill would be a first-round pick this year if he was draft eligible. The Nakuba kid who transferred from Clemson is a stud. Jaden Blue is Jaden Blue's the running back. The defensive back, I'm blanking on his name, that won the Thorpe Award. The point I'm trying to make, they got guys everywhere. And I give Sark credit. He's like, this is the strength of my team. This is what we have to do to win games. This is what we are going to do to win games. And so I give him credit, but I do worry about that offense. Which brings me to my pick. Listen, I have seen a lot of people take Ohio State -5.5. Yeah, by the way, Jadi Barron, thank you very much, producer Matt. I don't know why I said Jaden Blue. That's obviously the running back. It was clearly a JD, okay? Listen, I had the JD in my head. I just got a little bit tripped up. Forgive me. 85 guys on each roster. That's 170 players in this game, plus another 170 in the Notre Dame-Penn State game. That's 340. I'm sorry that I messed up a name, okay? Anyway, I know Texas fans are going to get in the comments and get all mad, but the defense is elite. But when I get to this pick, listen, I do kind of like Ohio State to cover the 5.5, but you know what I actually really like? I actually like the under of 53.5, and that is my best bet for this game. Listen, I can be critical of, or not even critical, but cautious or curious as to why Steve Sarkisian seemingly won't let Quinn Ewers loose. It feels to me like he's just not confident in Quinn Ewers. But the one thing I will say, that defense is so elite, so special. I think if there's anyone in theory that can slow down Jeremiah Smith in this passing attack, I do think it's Texas. Is anyone going to be able to? I don't think so. But Texas, obviously, a top 5 defense in college football. And then, obviously, it goes without saying, the best pass defense that Ohio State has faced all year. Mentioned it earlier, but they are number 1 in the country in interceptions on the season with 21. They have forced just about as many turnovers as anybody. And then also, by far, the fewest turnovers allowed of the season outside of Ohio State is Texas. Texas has only given up 8, or what did I say, turnovers? I'm tripping over my words here, but the point I'm trying to make, TDs allowed. Okay, so Texas, number 1 in interceptions forced. They are also number 2 in fewest passing TDs allowed. So I do believe in that defense, even though I have some questions about the offense. And so that is why my pick is the under in this game. I do think Ohio State is going to win. To be transparent, my best bet is still the under. I am picking Ohio State. I'll say somewhere in the neighborhood of like 24-7. But in my opinion, could I see this being a 16-7 game with 8 minutes to go and you're sweating out the 5.5? Yes. What I cannot see is a 30-27 game that hits the over. And so when I look at this game, this is what it's going to come down to. I think Ohio State's offense is going to keep humming because they're in a rhythm. They're confident. They have confidence. But I also think that this is as much of an opportunity to slow down Ohio State as anyone is going to have all year. I do think we still have to remember that Ohio State, that offensive line, they're exceeding expectations. There's no other way to put it. They were great against Tennessee. They were great against Oregon. Can they be great for a third straight game? We'll find out. But I do think, listen, I'm all over the place, but let me say this. I do think Ohio State is the best team. I do think they are worthy of the -5.5. But when I look at this matchup, this is what I think. I think Ohio State is able to move the ball at a better clip than Texas. I do think Texas probably slows them down a little bit better than anyone else has all playoff long, including Oregon, including Tennessee. Those are both very good defenses. Texas defense is elite. So I think they slow down Ohio State as much as you can with all of those weapons. And I think Ohio State completely shuts down Texas because Texas, listen, the book is out on Texas. I don't know what else there is to say. Arizona State knew. Load the box, make Quinn Ewers beat you. He really couldn't. I know that statistically Quinn Ewers looked good. Quinn Ewers was not that good in that game as the stats would make you seem. He finished 20 of 30, but there was just never a moment where you felt like, okay, he's going to take over this game. And I would argue, when is the last time that Quinn Ewers did take over a game? Michigan? Best game he played all year was probably Michigan. It wasn't either of the Georgia games, wasn't the game last week. Maybe against Clemson, he was pretty good. But to me, I think Ohio State wins. I think Ohio State covers. But I will say the best bet is the under 53.5. Ohio State 24-7 is my official game pick, but my best bet is 53.5.